I just think we're going to get to redo that at some point and throw in the press conferences we've seen recently there. What is good, my friends? Let's welcome in college football experts Barrett, Sallee, and Emory Hunt here. So let's start with the reigning national champs, the Georgia Bulldogs, 14-1 overall last season. As Chris mentioned in that look, they lost a number of players to the draft, 5 in the first round alone. Barrett, I'll start with you. Over under 11.5 wins for the Bulldogs.
All right, Amanda. So we see this number, 11.5, with a lot of different teams, 2 or 3 teams every single offseason. There's no way I would actually bet on a team to run the table in the regular season, so I'm going to go under. Look, I still think Georgia might actually run the table. I would never actually bet on this in real life, but if you're telling me that I have to make a pick, that I think there's so much that can change in college football. And for Georgia, they play Oregon. They still have an SEC East schedule that's pretty darn salty. Tennessee is a team that can jump up and bite you. So run the table? No. I'm not going to pick them to run the table. I'm not going to bet on it one way or the other. But that's all. You're asking for a lot of breaks to go your way to go 12-0.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Barrett. 11 is the number for me. Yeah, I'm not going to go over that for Georgia. I love the fact that they could tight end you to death this season. They go 4 deep at the position. Brock Bowers is a fantastic tight end prospect to get Eric Gilbert back. We know they're going to be able to run the football. They still have some dogs, pun intended, on defense, but going over that 11 number, running the table when we saw them have some close calls a few last year, I'm going to stay away from this if I'm betting, but definitely I'm going to go under because the hook is what scares me.
And you got that hook there, and it is only with the Georgia Bulldogs at 11.5 because Alabama coming in at 11 right now. Nick Saban, of course, making all the headlines this week. Look, they do have Bryce Young. They have Will Anderson there. The number, as I mentioned, Emory, it is set at 11. How do you feel about the Bulldogs with this number? Or, excuse me, sorry, Crimson Tide.
Hey, forget everything I just said about Georgia and not trusting the number and going over with Alabama because I feel like they could run the table. Jamar Gibbs, to me, coming in from Georgia Tech, he's a sleeper Heisman candidate, in my opinion, one of the best running backs in the country. He's a lot like Alvin Kamara. You add that game breaker to which to be a fantastic passing game, and Alabama can pick up right where they left off. They have the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. They're still going to be very good on defense. Will Anderson could even be a Heisman candidate. So this is a team, I feel like they lost a championship. They're angry. They're upset. You could hear Saban in that press conference. So I expect Alabama to hit the ground running this season.
Yeah, I'm going to go over, too. It's the hook that makes all the difference, right? There's such a big difference between 11 and 11.5. And, yeah, if I push at 11, okay, I will pay that big off. It's fine. Going over 12-0 with that schedule, with the 2 best players in America, with the greatest coach of all time, with a coach that clearly wants to go out and prove a point after what happened last year, I'll take the over with Alabama because I do think they probably will run the table. But if they don't, then I push at 11. I think a push or a 12-win season is far more likely than a 10-win season. So I'll go over.
Okay, so I just want to say before we get to the next team, like there's a significant drop-off in the win total here. But I do want to mention when it comes to the playoff and the national championship, would you take Georgia or Alabama versus the field? Georgia or Alabama is minus 130. The field is plus 100. Barrett, which way would you go here?
I get plus 100 on the field. I'll take that all day long because you give me Ohio State, you give me your Oklahoma Sooners, you give me Clemson, you give me a team like Oklahoma State, maybe USC now that it's got Jordan Addison can jump up there. So I understand when you look at Georgia or Alabama versus the field, like the one thing that in that bet you have to consider also is that there might not be a spot for one of them in the college football playoff. So depending on how the rest of the landscape sort of works out. So I will take the field. There's a lot of really good teams out there that have the ability to take the title this year. I think Ohio State primarily is the one that I think a lot of folks are going to talk about. Don't sleep on Clemson. So I'll take the field, especially with that value.
Definitely taking the field because one team you didn't mention plays right in the SEC is LSU. People are sleeping on the Tigers this season. That's one to keep an eye on. But you're right. USC is there. I won't say Oklahoma. I know Amanda is waiting for everyone to say Oklahoma. Not happening. But I will say Ohio State is probably another one that's a strong national title contender.
I will say we had Brady Quinn on yesterday, and he put Oklahoma long shot there to go to the college football playoff. Barrett did not. He did not. He had the Clemson Tigers there. All right, let's talk about the next team with the third biggest odds here in the SEC, or third biggest win total, I should say. And this is where we get to Jimbo Fisher and his Aggies. There's so much going on right now. It's hard to picture exactly what's going to go on the field here. So their win total right now for the Aggies set at 8.5. Emory, what do you think?
These hooks scare me, man. So I'm going under because I feel like 8 is the number for Texas A&M. I'm a big fan of Anaya Smith and what he can do as a multifaceted threat on offense. So I think he's another one of these dark horse Heisman type of players where he's going to find the football a lot. He's going to find the end zone a lot. But Texas A&M lost a ton up front and also on defense, so I worry about them running the table or getting over that number. The hook is what scares me. So if I feel like they're going to go 8, go under, and I could be comfortable right there.
Yeah, the hook scares me too. I'm going to go under. I'm not buying the Texas A&M hype for a couple reasons. One, Emory mentioned the trenches. They're going to rely on a lot of young guys in the trenches on the defensive side of the ball. You have to be able to roll 8, 9, 10 deep on the defensive front, and I don't know if they can do that quite yet. And then offensively, it's very, very difficult to run a Jimbo Fisher offense if you're a quarterback. Haynes King was there for a game and a quarter. Max Johnson, yeah, he played pretty well at LSU. Connor Wegman, a very good freshman, but you're talking about 3 players in a battle where they're going to be asked to do an awful lot. And I think in some instances have to put up 30, 35, 40 points a game. So I just don't see it. Jimbo Fisher's an 8-win coach. Outside of the COVID year, he is a very average SEC West coach. Yeah, they beat Alabama last year. They still lost 4 games. So I'm having a hard time believing the Texas A&M hype right now. We
find the same number with the Kentucky Wildcats there. I'm not sure how you guys feel about the hook in this one. There's a lot to like about this Kentucky team. Look, their best winning percentage last season since the 70s. Will Levis, not just projected as a first rounder. Chris Trapasso in his latest mock draft has him as the #1 overall pick. And I will want to mention, I don't know how I stumbled over this. Mark Stoops is like sending bottles of bourbon to the Pope and signing them. This is actually happening. So 8.5, we get the hook again, Barrett. What do you think about Kentucky?
So with Kentucky, look, they're going to win ugly. I buy in the Will Levis hype. Maybe not like Chris thinks in #1 overall, but I think he can make it into the first round. I do believe that he has that kind of play in him. They've got a good offense, a run-based offense with Rodriguez. They'll be able to do that just fine. And then defensively, they're going to be solid. They always are under Mark Stoops. So I will take the over. Look, if I had to go, if you're asking me would I actually do this in real life, probably not. I probably would stay away from it because I do think 8.5 is a pretty solid number. But I trust Mark Stoops. He's a very underrated coach. They've got good players. They've got good playmakers. They're going to be consistent. They play in the SEC East. Their out-of-conference schedule isn't all that. So I will go over reluctantly. But again, I wouldn't bet it in real life.
Yeah, you're reluctantly going over, so I'm going to confidently go under at 7. I feel like 7 is the number for Kentucky. They lost a lot defensively up front. I worry about them replacing those guys. Now, once they get out there, we know they can coach those guys up. DeAndre Square, to me, is one fantastic linebacker. He's going to have to carry this football team on that side of the football. And we talk about their non-conference schedule. Chattanooga gave these guys all they could handle last season, so you can't really trust Kentucky to not lay an egg at some point. So I'm going to go under with that number.
Let's go to the lane train. Ole Miss there. Of course, the big thing here is no more Matt Corral there. You guys are on opposite sides of this one as well. The win total set at 7.5. Emory, I believe you're going with the under here for the Rebels.
Yeah, it's the hook that kills me, and you can't really trust Ole Miss. I don't know what to expect from them up front on both sides of the ball. Don't know what to expect from them in the secondary. Love the running backs, though. Ulysses Bentley is one fantastic tailback coming over from SMU. So they're going to be able to have some success. They're going to be able to hit some home runs off the backfield. But everything else, to me, is still up in the air. I know Dart is the quarterback there, but, I mean, you just can't trust them right now outside of their backfield, in my opinion.
I'm going over, way over. 4 out-of-conference wins right out of the gate. They get Vanderbilt as their permanent. They get Kentucky as their rotator. That's at home. Kentucky's tough, but still, I think Ole Miss upgraded at running back with Ulysses Bentley and Zach Evans. They upgraded at tight end with Michael Trigg, a guy who's more like Eric Gilbert, a hybrid-type wide receiver tight end. They get Jalen Robinson, a Swiss Army knife from the UCF, all AAC 2 years ago. And I like Jackson Dart. I think he's got the potential, but Lane is very comfortable with Luke Altmaier if Luke Altmaier wins that job as well. So the combination of the schedule and the ability to dictate the style. We all know styles make fights, and I think outside of the 2 big dogs in the SEC, Alabama and Georgia, Ole Miss can dictate style better than anybody else in the conference. So just play adequate defense, they'll cruise over that number.
Let's go to the Tennessee Volunteers. Second year under Josh Heupel there. Hendon Hooker looks like he's their QB1. Look, he says all summer for him, it is all work and no plays, taking it very seriously. Same number here for the Volunteers as the Rebels, 7.5. Barrett, do you like the over or under here?
I'm going over. I think Tennessee is going to be pretty darn solid. I think they're the second best team in the SEC East. Again, sort of like what we talked about with Ole Miss. Styles make fights. Tennessee was the fastest offense in the country last year in terms of plays per second. So I think with that kind of tempo, under a guy like Hendon Hooker, who's a multidimensional threat, who has a full offseason as the unquestioned starter. Remember, Joe Milton was their starter going into last season. Hendon Hooker proved that he can be an absolute stud last season and did so sort of on the fly in the first year of a new coach's system. So that, coupled with the fact that defensively I think they're going to be pretty darn solid, and they've got some weapons outside for Hendon Hooker to go to, I think Tennessee goes over. I think they're an 8, perhaps a 9-win team.
Totally agree with you, Barrett. I'm going over. I think they're an 8-4 type team. Hooker, to me, is someone that could be this year's version of Kenny Pickett, a veteran guy that can find a way to fly up the NFL draft boards with how well he plays. He's someone that I thought would have come out last year, but coming back, the veteran. This is a veteran group on both sides of the ball, and now you have a veteran group, second year in that system. They could be a potential problem for a lot of teams in the SEC. So I like the over here with 8 wins for Tennessee.
Decent amount of agreement between these two gentlemen. It's Friday, so we don't have to speak correctly all the time here. Let's go through and recap their win totals for the teams we just went through here in the SEC. As I mentioned, a lot of agreement. Georgia, they're both going with the under there. Both of them says, look, that hook, that scares them there when it comes to Alabama, both taking the over. Both of them going with the under for Jimbo Fisher and his Aggies. Opposite sides when it comes to Kentucky and Ole Miss, but they both agree take the over big time when it comes to the Volunteers. Let's welcome back in Barrett, Sallee, and Emory Hunt here going through win totals for the SEC. We are now less than 100 days away to college football. So let's start with LSU, the winningest coach in Notre Dame history, now down in Baton Rouge. He was talking about spring ball. Look, their offensive line had some big issues. He feels a lot more comfortable with that now. The win total here, Barrett, we'll start with you, set at 7. Do you take the over or the under?
I'm going to go under with LSU, and LSU fans relax. I think Brian Kelly will win a national championship at LSU. It's just not going to be this year. From a personnel perspective, the numbers just aren't there. I do like their quarterback situation, but you mentioned the offensive line. Cam Wire is really the only guy they have with any significant starting experience. And in the SEC and college football really as a whole right now, you have to be able to slow down the pass, and they're so thin in the secondary. So LSU, to me, look, I like the future of it, but Brian Kelly even mentioned during the Texas Bowl broadcast when he was up in the booth watching his new team play that just from a numbers standpoint, they're going to have to hit the portal hard, and they did, but not hard enough to withstand the grind of a 12-game SEC schedule. So I'm going to go under.
Oh, they did hit it hard, man, and I'm going over that number. Think about it. They got the best cornerback coming from the Sun Belt Conference, Louisiana's Mekhi Gardner. They took both of Arkansas's best defensive backs and added them to the secondary. Their defensive front seven is tremendous. Got Ojulari out there rushing with Ali Gay. And on the offense side of football, I can trust Brian Kelly to get the offensive line right. Noah Cain paired up with John Emory gives them a tremendous backfield. Jayden Daniels, it has a lot of Joe Burrow to his game in terms of he's not afraid of pressure. He's able to supersede pressure and have success. And oh, by the way, Besh at receiver, Booty at receiver, and another Raging Cajun. How about that? Kyron Lacey at receiver. This team is loaded. Go over. I got 11-1 for LSU this season. Smash that number over.
Smash it, he says. All right, Mr. Raging Cajun.
11-1. Let's go, Emory.
Emory, that's what you're sticking with there for LSU? Yeah, I mean, you think people are sleeping on them.
Yeah, they are. I'm definitely sticking with this number. LSU is outstanding. Brian Kelly is a great offensive line developer of talent. I am not worried about what they're going to do with that offensive line. They're going to be able to run the football, operate off play action. Defensively, they're going to smother folks. This is a sleeper team, one that could be a dark horse playoff team by season's end.
Emory, I was going to let you start on Billy Napier, Mr. Raging Cajun over here, but because you're making such a bold prediction, I'm going to start with Barrett here. So new home for Billy Napier there in Florida. Look, so much intrigue around Anthony Richardson. Barrett, the number here also set at 7.
All right, I'll give the Raging Cajun some love because I'm going to go over with Billy Napier. Look, I love Billy Napier. I think he inherited a really weird situation because the recruiting just wasn't there with Dan Mullen. But we've seen the Anthony Richardson love at quarterback in the NFL draft circles over the last couple of weeks. I think there's some validity to that. And they have a pretty deep and unique running back situation, running back core that I think they'll be able to work with. Plus, the schedule, I don't necessarily think it's that tough. I think the one swing game might be LSU. Obviously, Emory thinks that's going to be a little bit more difficult than I do. So I'm going to go over. In reality, I'd probably say push, but I think it's much more likely that they go 8 instead of 6. So give me the Gators and give me the over.
Yeah, I'm going to go over as well. I think 9 is the number for Florida. The run game and defense will win you a lot of football games still in this era of football. Their run game is going to be tremendous. Anthony Richardson could catapult himself into a top 10 pick if he has a fantastic year, and I know he will do that under Billy Napier and what he's able to do with the QB run game. I'm just tired of seeing all my Raging Cajun prospects. So everyone but Louisiana. So I do like Florida going over that number.
Oh, I love the positivity here, Emory. I really, really do. Let's go to Arkansas. Let's see if you're positive about Arkansas, because I'm not feeling like you are looking at our rundown. I will say, again, these random things I find. Fayetteville recently named the best place to live in the SEC, so I guess they can, stick with that and be happy about that. The number also set at 7 for Arkansas here, and Emory, you're taking the under.
Definitely taking the under. I think 6 is the number here. A big fan of KJ Jefferson, but they lost a lot, especially on defense. A defense that I thought was improving as the season went on, and they lost Big Traylon Burks as well, a big part of their offense. So I still have a lot of questions about Arkansas. We saw them lay an egg in a couple of games last season. I think that's still the case this year. So for me, 6 is the number, so I'm going to go under.
I'm going to go over, again, more likely 8 than 6. I think Kendall Briles, that offense with KJ Jefferson, with what he can do from a multidimensional running standpoint, I think is a big deal. I think with KJ, it's almost impossible to prepare for what he can do. There's not many quarterbacks like him. There's not many players like him. So it's incredibly hard to prepare for him. And then defensively, they hit the portal extremely, extremely hard. I think Bumper Poole getting back at linebacker is also very, very strong for them. And partnering him up with Drew Sanders, the Alabama transfer, I've heard rave reviews about what Drew Sanders can do for that defense and what that tandem looks like for that Arkansas defense. I trust Sam Pittman. At least I trust him to get to 8 wins, and I would be surprised if it's 6.
Opposite sides on that one, but is agreement when it comes to Mississippi State. Look, they had a lot of starters, including a lot of folks on that defensive front get off-season surgery, so we weren't able to see a whole lot of them in the spring there. But the number set at 6.5. I'm not sure if it's the hook you guys don't like, but both of you are taking the under. Barrett, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm still not the biggest believer in Mike Leach in the SEC. I know he has his moments where, they look lights out, including his first game against LSU in 2020. But then they have these mind-numbing, just snooze fest that they go through. And I like Will Rogers, but I don't like their receivers. I don't necessarily think they're that stout up front along the offensive line. And then defensively, there's no star in the front 7, and there's really no depth there either. So yeah, the hook grabs me a little bit, but I think they're far more likely to be a 6-6 team that goes to a bowl game and perhaps get that 7th win. But I don't see 7-5 in the regular season.
Yeah, I'm going to go under as well. They lost 2 key players, Mekhi Polk at receiver. We know about the offensive line play. And on defense, I still worry about them within the front 7. I do like Jalen Green, their safety back there. But for the most part, this is a team, a philosophy that I just don't understand in terms of how it's going to be able to function consistently throughout the SEC. So I'm going to go under. I actually think 4 may be the number here for Mississippi State.
All right, way under for both of you. It's not the hook. You just don't like the team per se. Not that you don't like them. You just don't have a lot of faith in them. Let's go to Auburn. Look, they still haven't had a winning season since 2019. Second year under Brian Harsin, 6.5 here as well. Emory, over, under?
I'm going to go under, but a lot of it has to do with whether or not we see growth from TJ Finley from the quarterback position. I think he has all of the tools. When you list him on paper, he's able to do whatever you want him to do, but you want to see it from a consistent level. And I know they have the run game, but you wonder about the losses on defense, and can Finley make that jump? Can we see Big Ponchatoula jump into the stratosphere? Hopefully he can, because this is a team that has some pieces on paper, but collectively the consistency is where I have some questions.
Yeah, consistency is the problem. I'm going to go under as well. I think the biggest thing is the trenches for me. Derek Hall is really the only established defensive lineman they have. You have to roll 8 deep. Auburn doesn't have that. They lost so many players to the transfer portal up front on defense. And then offensively, their offensive line's experienced, but it's just not really that good. And I just don't think you can trust those guys after what we saw last year. So on top of that, the quarterback situation, not necessarily stable, and wide receiver has been a position of need this entire offseason. They haven't really hit it all that hard through the transfer portal. They need to. They can't now because the deadline for immediate eligibility is gone. So that schedule is just ultra tough as well. So I'll take Auburn, probably going to be a 6-6 team, but I think that they're much more likely to be that than a 7-5, 8-4 team.
All right, let's go to South Carolina here. Their win total set at 5.5. Of course, the new home of Spencer Rattler. Barrett, this is somebody who not that long ago was a Heisman favorite at the beginning of the season, and then a lot of things transpired, of course, there at Oklahoma. You're going with the over for the Gamecocks.
Yeah, and we're talking about them making a bowl game. You know, they can do that. I mean, it's Spencer Rattler. It's not like he's a terrible quarterback. Caleb Williams is just better. I think the standard that he's going to be asked to live up to at South Carolina is so much different than the one that he was asked to live up to at Oklahoma. So I think he's good enough just by himself to win himself a couple of games. They've got a solid defensive front. And Shane Beamer, to me, probably one of the more underrated coaches in the country. His first year last year, I think you saw him set the tone for what the identity of the program will be. They love playing for him. I think the fact that they can be motivated by their coach and win for their coach despite being massively undermanned against some of these teams will help. But Spencer Rattler is going to win them a few games. I think making a bowl game at the very minimum for South Carolina.
It's the hook that scares me, so I'm going to go under. I have them right at 5, and Spencer Rattler definitely needs a bounce-back season. He has a great receiver. He's going to throw to an Antoine Wells Jr. Saw a lot of him at James Madison. I cover a lot of FCS football. He was a stud from day one. He's going to be a fantastic player. He's going to be an all-SEC player out there on the perimeter, but everywhere else, you wonder if they have enough, like Barrett talked about, to get through the SEC.
Let's go to the Missouri Tigers here. They were in total set at 5, and both of you very positive when it comes to this number. Both are taking the over. Barrett, why?
Well, because I think the way Eli Drinkwitz approaches offensive football is that he'll find a way to make it work. People don't realize just how innovative and creative he is. I just have concerns about the quarterback position. So I'm going to go over. I would like to just bet 5, but that would be a push. But if you're talking about Jack Abraham from Southern Miss potentially being the starting quarterback and or Brady Cook getting snaps or whoever, I just can't buy into them being just a complete juggernaut or at least relevant in the SEC East. So I think Missouri makes a bowl game. I trust Eli Drinkwitz to have some success offensively and find a way to make that thing work, but they're not going to win many toss-up games.
Yeah, I'm going to go over, but 6 is my number because I feel like their defense will be better. Jaden Jernigan up front, the defensive lineman, should be a fantastic player for them, but they'll get one upset a year. They're good for one, but outside of that, anything over 6 to me would be pushing it. So I'm going to go over because the number I have is just them finishing 6-6, which would be a bowl game for them.
Finally, we end up with Vanderbilt here. I was trying to scroll through and see when they last had a winning season. 2013, I believe it was, when they went 9-4 there. Their win total set at 2.5 games. Emory, we taking the under here. We going back to 2020. What are we going to do?
Love Vanderbilt University. Nashville is a fantastic city. They do
He's
a lot of
starting
great
with positive
things.
here.
It's the sandwich approach because I got to go under. The hook is what kills me on a number that's 2. So it's tough for Vanderbilt right now, in my opinion, on both sides of the ball to have any semblance of success to get over this number. If it was maybe just 2, I would probably tease it, but the hook just kills me. I'm going to go under this number. I think they win 2 games this year, go 2-10.
I'm going to go over, I guess. I mean, Elon. I'm Ron Burgundy. No, Elon, that's a win. At Hawaii, it might be a win, but at least it's a vacation to Hawaii, so good for you, Vandy. You get those 2. Okay, Northern Illinois on the road, maybe some upset in the SEC. I mean, fingers crossed, I guess. Too bad Wake Forest is the out-of-conference game, the big out-of-conference game, because Wake Forest is actually good. I'm going to say they get Elon, they go to Hawaii, they get a win, and then something happens somewhere. Because they actually do have a pretty good quarterback situation. I'll give them that.
Something happens somewhere, and this is why we like betting and talking about this, because that's what we have to go on at some point. Something will happen somewhere, and at least you get to go to Hawaii there. Okay, guys, give me a value pick to win the SEC. And Emory, I'm looking through your answers here. No surprise by the ones you're giving us.
Yeah, clearly I set the table for me going to Baton Rouge to get treated like a king. So yeah, LSU definitely at plus 4,000 is great value. But the other one is Florida. I feel like people are sleeping on Billy Napier, the talent he's brought in via transfer and also recruiting, and what they already had on the roster at plus 7,500. That's tremendous value. So I'm big on the Gators. I think they're going to be a very underrated team here. Anthony Richardson, to me, should be in New York City when it's all said and done for the Heisman Trophy ceremony.
I'll take the Rebs and Lane Kiffin at plus 2,000. I think, well, first things first, I trust Lane Kiffin. But the second part about this is the groundwork's already been established. They know how to win at a reasonably high level. They went to the Sugar Bowl last year, and a lot of those pieces are gone. But the fundamental aspect of that program, what Lane Kiffin is asking from his players, remains. And they can't be much worse defensively. So if they only take a small step back offensively, that might be fine. And really all they have to do, in my opinion, if they get that head-to-head win over Alabama, then that's huge. Now, I don't think they will, but if we're talking about the long shot to win the SEC, the value pick, you're going to be plus 2,000 when really Ole Miss, all they need to do, in my opinion, is hold, serve, and spring one upset, then I'll take it.
That is not as bad as, look at my little scribbles here, as you guys can see, so I'm going to put that down. Our producer Noah is going through Vanderbilt with 10,000 to 1 odds. Barrett, he wanted to know, since you're going with 3 wins there, is there any number big enough where you would put like $1 on Vanderbilt?
I mean, at plus 10,000, I'll do it right now.
Why
not? What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
You know? Why not? I mean, it's not going to happen. It's a waste of $1, but I mean, you know, it's just $1. I can go find one of those on the street somewhere.
There you go. All right, guys, thank you so much. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you very soon. Let's recap their win totals here in the SEC. Look, some win somewhere. Barrett says we'll take the over. Vanderbilt 2.5 there, but up toward the top. Opposite sides when it comes to LSU. Barrett taking the under. Emory not only liking the over there, he says it's a great value pick with LSU and Florida to win the SEC. And you can hear more from our guys on the Cover 3 podcast there. Everything you need to know about the world of college football. Of course, latest episodes having all to do with the drama that we've had in the SEC recently between one Nick Saban and one Jimbo Fisher. Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.